Sometimes I think, what will people say of me when I'm only just a memory?
This year, my senior year, I learned that it's just best to find yourself, focus more on God's calling for your life, spend time in His Word, listening, being patient, and just find what your passion is.
The one thing I've learned here at LCA this year is that you always should try to act with integrity, because no matter what, people are going to try to do the wrong thing, and you got to make sure you don't.
The one thing that God has taught me in my life is to be a living testimony. As Christians, we are constantly living our testimony. Some of you might think your testimonies aren't as good because you never went through the struggles that other people have. You can still use that testimony to support people, your strength in the Word to support people. Paul, in Philippians, is writing to the church of Philippi in a prison cell. And through that, he has encouraged other men to speak the word of God more courageously. In Acts 1:8, Jesus tells us to be the witnesses to the ends of the earth for his name. And that's what a testimony is.
For my one thing for my senior year is to put others first.
We as Christians can have no days off, no matter what our situation or circumstance or how we're feeling that day. We can't let it affect our mood or how we treat people, because we don't know who we're going to come across and who we need to share the love of Christ with that day.
Okay, so my one thing is, don't worry, because God has you in His hands. I mean, think about it. It says in Psalms that He cares about the littlest little sparrow, and He goes and provides for him. So won't God provide for you? Won't He take care of all of your worries?
For all you upcoming seniors, it's really easy to look at your senior year as your last year here and your last opportunity to take everything you can. But God created us to give, and I think it might be more godly for us to look at our last year here as our last opportunity to give what we can and to make positive contributions before we leave.
One thing for my senior year is don't quit. You just need to keep on going with the year because it's hard and fun.
My one thing is self-worth. People are just putting their self-worth and how they think of themselves is how people think of them. Like, I learned that if I put my self-worth in what God thinks of me, then I don't really care what other people think of me, and I'm more beautiful because of what God has done through my life.
My one thing that I've learned this year and that I'm still working on is to just trust God with everything. Life can get really stressful at times, but just believe that He has everything in control and He knows exactly what He's doing for your life.
One thing I want to tell everyone leaving LCA is making your own mark. Don't go with the flow. Find your own path and stick to it.
I heard a song a little while ago by Big Daddy Weave called Yours Will Be. And there's a line in the song that says, yours will be the only name that matters to me, the only one whose favor I seek. And that last line really stood out to me. God should be the only person whose favor we seek. So many times I do stuff to try to please myself or to impress other people. But it's amazing the difference it makes in my life, not only in how I feel, but in how I live, when pleasing God becomes the only thing that matters to me. Galatians 1:10 says, am I trying to win the approval of God or of human beings? If I were still trying to please people, I would not be a servant of Christ. To live a life where God is the only one whose favor I seek. That's my one thing.
One thing that I want people to take away from this year is to stay focused. Remain focused on God and never stray from the path.
My one thing is to find peace in God. I've learned over the past couple of years that we're going to go through a lot of things that are going to cause us a lot of pain. We have to remember that everything has a reason. Like, God allows everything to happen for a reason. He has a purpose and a plan for our lives. And everything that happens just takes us one step closer to Him. God has already planned every one of these things to happen to us for a reason, and He doesn't do it to hurt us. He does it because He trusts us. He trusts us to trust Him through it. And we just have to remember that no matter what we go through, He's going to be right there. Like, when we feel like we're completely torn apart, He's right there to put us back together again. And we can find peace in that. John 14:27 says, peace I leave with you, my peace I give to you. Not as the world gives to you, do I give. Do not let your heart be troubled, nor let it be fearful. God promises us peace when it seems impossible to find it.
Okay, so my one thing for this year is don't give up on anything, no matter what the difficulty is. May it be art, school, or friendships. Just don't give up. Keep fighting no matter what.
Follow the dreams God has placed in your heart. Don't let anyone ever talk you out of them, because God's just got so much for you in your future. And if you let people talk you out of them, you let negative thoughts and ideas and comments hold you back from what God's got for you, you're not going to go as far as your potential is. So just let God lead you and guide you. Let Him take you higher than anything you could ever dream of, because He's got big plans for you.
Philippians 2 says that God is working in each one of our lives, and He's giving us the desire and the power to do things to please Him. Later on in the chapter, Paul talks about how in the race he's been running is not in vain and his work was not useless. And I just want to encourage every single one of you today to make sure what you're doing is worth something. Don't be useless. For the last 3 years of my life, I played soccer, and I realized how useless soccer is to me. Every time I stepped on in the field, I was stressed and I was nervous, and I realized how unhealthy it was and how far I grew from God because I was constantly living in a state of fear and anxiety. And I just encourage every single one of you to evaluate your hobbies and what you're spending your free time on, because God has designed each one of us to do something special and to have these desires to do things that please Him. So figure out what that is and go for it. Tap into that. The last thing I want anyone to do is get to the end of their high school career and realize that everything they've been doing is worthless and the race they've been running is worthless, and as a child and a servant of God, to realize that they've done nothing to further the kingdom.
Something that God has taught me this year is to depend on Him and trust in Him. We moved down here about 3 years ago from Montana, and coming to LCA was really hard my first year. I struggled a lot, and I couldn't find my place. And God really put me through a lot that year. It was for His purpose and His plan, and everything that He's got me through was for His glory. And I'm thankful every day that He's moved us down here.
So if I could say one thing God taught me this year, it's to remember who you are, because if you just try to change yourself and fit in with everyone else, you're going to be like everyone else. God made us unique, so if you want to honor God, you have to be unique in who you are and find yourself in Him.
Probably the most important thing I can encourage you to do as underclassmen is to make disciples. I love the analogy of the sheep and the shepherd as our relationship with Christ is. He is the shepherd, and we as Christians have a liability to point others to the shepherd and also to walk with them as they grow closer to the shepherd. This is the process of discipleship, which is getting involved in their lives, knowing their interests.
My one thing is to forgive. Whether it's my family, my friends, or people who just hurt me, the biggest part is to forgive them, because through life there's always going to be people who hurt you, and if you hold a grudge, it's only going to keep you from being closer to God, and it's going to tear you apart and can eventually change who you are. Even if it's not easy to forgive someone, it will make you feel a lot better once you actually do, because it'll take a serious weight off of your shoulders, and life will be so much better when you're not holding on to all of this burden that you put on yourself.
I wanna live my